Hello, this is Kate from dailytarotgirl.com, and this is my video review of the Duality deck by Tanya. So this deck comes in a beautiful cloth pouch, and it's actually a very good quality cloth pouch. So I'll take out the deck, and I love the backs of these cards. And this may sound weird, but I often judge cards based on what the backs look like. And I just think these are wonderful. I think they're lovely. So this deck has 26 cards, so it's definitely a smaller deck. And the cardstock is glossy, and the cardstock is fairly thin. It's not a really the cards don't feel super sturdy, which would only be a problem if you use your deck a lot or if you're kind of rough with your cards. But the feel of the cards is nice, and they feel good when you shuffle them, and they feel good when you're holding them in your hand, which I think is important. And the deck comes with a guidebook. Now, the guidebook is unique in that it's actually like a normal kind of full-size book. Or when I say full-size, I mean it's not like, you know, the little white books that usually come with an oracle or a tarot deck. So it's very easy to read. You know, the print is like a normal size, and there's color pictures of each card. And, you know, each description is fairly meaty. There's a lot to work with there. And I much prefer looking things up in this book than in some of my other decks where it's like a tiny little book that you have to struggle with. So that's one thing I really liked about that, the companion book. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to just slowly go through the deck to give you the opportunity to have a look at these cards. So each card has a picture of a woman's face on it, and some of the cards have like animals, or this one has bees. But it's definitely a very girly deck. There's no boys, no boys in this deck. So it's very, very feminine, and it has a very youthful energy, very fresh, young, feminine energy, which to me, it makes this deck feel very gentle. And I've noticed, like, when I do readings for myself on, you know, issues that I'm upset about or that I'm feeling kind of raw about, I find that this deck is really quite helpful. It's quite a soft, gentle deck. And it almost feels playful yet deep, because you can definitely go deep with these cards. It's not a fluffy deck or anything like that, but there's definitely kind of a fresh, playful feel as well. This is actually probably my favorite card in the whole deck. Now, one interesting thing that I noticed right away when I looked at these cards was that each face has a red dot, or more than one red dot, on a different spot on their face, and I couldn't figure out what the significance of this was, and I actually didn't read the companion book cover to cover, so I don't know, it might explain it in there, but a couple people on my YouTube channel mentioned that the dots correspond with EFT tapping points. So if you don't know what EFT is, I forget what it stands for now, but it's where you tap on various kind of pressure points on your face while you say like an affirmation. And so I thought that was interesting. I just love the artwork in these cards. I love, love, love it. And as you can see, these cards are quite simple. Like, you know, there'll be a woman's face, a girl's face, and an animal or some kind of symbol, and then a word, a keyword. So I like that. I appreciate that. I don't find these cards to be overwhelming. I have lots of decks where the artwork's very busy and very intricate, which is kind of fun. I like that too, but it can sometimes be overwhelming. Whereas this deck actually keeps it quite simple, And yet, even though the artwork is fairly simple, I find it's not difficult to get a lot out of each card. It's almost easier, actually, to really kind of go deep into my intuition and my creativity when I read with this deck. So I've had the opportunity to read with this deck for, I guess, a few weeks now. So I've done a couple readings on my YouTube channel with it, and I've done tons of readings on myself with it. I quite often will draw one card a day. And what I notice when I read with this deck is that I'm really getting a real sense of the personalities of the girls in these cards. I love this, how her hair turns into trees. I think that's really cool. So each girl has a really distinct personality, and this makes dialoguing with this deck really, really easy. So if you've ever done dialoguing with your cards, it's where you kind of go into the card and imagine having a conversation with the figure in that card. And when I do it with this deck, it's very, very easy because the girls' personalities are just so strong, and it's not hard for me to kind of have an imaginary chit-chat with with these girls. I feel like each girl has so much advice to give and so much to say. I feel like this is a very it's almost like all these girls in this deck are just like dying to tell you something, and they have so much to say, which is ironic because all of them have closed mouths. So none of them have their mouths open, and yet they're definitely not silent. They seem to have a lot to communicate, and it's almost like these girls in these cards communicate telepathically with me when I read with these cards. It's quite funny. I love this one with the crow. Magic. So the only thing, my only complaint about this deck, I don't really have any complaints, but if I had to think of one complaint, it would be that I wish there was more cards. There's only 26 cards, and 26 cards is plenty to do a reading with, and for a deck, but I love these cards so much that I just wish there was more. I almost feel kind of greedy. I'm like, oh, I want there to be more cards in this deck because they're just so beautiful. So I think I've come full circle, but I've got a few more things to say, so I'm just gonna keep going through them, let you have a second look at some of these cards. I like all of them, but I have favorites. I like this one, Fear Free. So I think this deck would be actually really good for, well, I think a lot of girls will like this deck. I'm sure boys will like this deck as well. So I think teen girls would love this deck especially, and I also think this deck is totally appropriate for kids. The cards are pretty easy to read, like the keywords are easy to understand. So I think this actually would be a good deck for kids, but of course adults, of course, are going to love this deck too. I think it would be a good first deck as well, simply because, like I said, it's a simple deck. The keywords are simple, the imagery is simple, it's gentle, it's beautiful. It's an easy deck to read with. So for all those readings, I think it would make a really nice first deck, and I actually think the fact that there's not so many cards would be another reason that this would be a really good first deck for someone. They wouldn't get too overwhelmed trying to memorize the meanings of each card. And I just love the symbols in each card too. Here we've got origami, because they're swans or cranes. And here we've got fish. So yeah, this is just a beautiful deck. I really enjoyed reading with this deck over the last few weeks, and I know this is going to be a deck that I'm going to come back to again and again. So I highly recommend this deck. If you've been watching this and these images really resonate with you and you're really loving this deck, I know that you're going to love reading with this deck. It's really quite a unique kind of experience reading with this deck. So thank you so much for watching. I'm going to put the link, if you want to purchase these cards, I'm going to put the link right below the video. Okay, and thank you so much.